Okay, g'day, welcome to the screencast on Alexander the Great. Getting near the end of our story now. The gods are withdrawing their favour of Alexander. We've seen how the gods have favoured Alexander for all his life thus far, but in the final moments, the gods certainly are turning away from this Greek king. Okay, so we talked about the mutineer Opus. Now, this was where Alexander announced to his veterans that he was sending them home. And at first, that news was received welcomingly. The veterans are very happy to be going home. This is what they've been campaigning for ages, right back at the mutiny of the Bias. But then Alexander made a second announcement that he is going to replace them with his Persians, whom he called the successors. Now, this infuriated the Macedonians, that they felt Alexander was thus sick of them. He wanted to get rid of them, and he wanted to go on with his Persians, which is probably exactly what Alexander was thinking. And so the Macedonians, they mutinied. They yelled at Alexander, they taunted him, they mocked his idea of being son of the god. They told him to go and carry on campaigning with your father, which is, mocking his connection with Zeus and Mun. And Alexander reacted with rage, as we talked about. He leapt down and seized 13 men, probably at random, and they were executed. They were stoned to death. So we see here at Alexander, who is prone to incredible rage. He's impulsive. And as Philip actually made the point in class yesterday, is that when he feels his life is under threat or his ego is endangered, he reacts with this furious and ruthless anger. And sending 13 of his men off to be executed does show how far Alexander has come from that young boy, or the young boy who tamed Bucephalus, and then all he wanted to do was to lead the Pan-Hellenic invasion of Persia. And now we see Alexander as a tyrant. He's a despot. He's a cruel. He's a ruthless, and I would say he's a heartless man, particularly with his men and how he manipulates them. And we saw that manipulation after the mutiny at Opus, when Alexander goes into his tent and sulks for 3 days. And what upset his men the most was that he wasn't coming out, but he was sort of welcoming his Persians. And he was allowing his Persians to give him the customary kiss, and he was calling his Persians a kinsman. And this really upset his Macedonians, and so they went from anger at Alexander to despair that Alexander was rejecting him. And again, they were outside his quarters, begging for him to come out and willing to hand over any other instigators in the rebellion. And as we know, Alexander did come out, and he made a series of speeches and told the men they were heartless, they were useless, and he was going on without them. And the next day they were in tears, and Alexander was moved to tears himself and said, okay, you're all my kinsmen, and you can all have the customary kiss, and we're going to have a massive celebratory banquet. And then the very next day, all the 10,000 veterans can go home rich and respected, with their children of Persian women being looked after by Alexander. So, as I talked about, this relationship with Alexander and his men, it's an abusive relationship, really, with Alexander being the manipulative partner. But look what Alexander got out of the mutiny of Opus. Again, he always gets what he wants. He got rid of the old guard, those who were against the policy of fusion. They're gone, and their children had remained. So he has the beginnings of the new rulers and the new soldiers in his empire in Asia. Alexander, no matter what the situation, always gets what he wants. Then we move to the death of Hephaestion, and Arrian is our source here. Now, with Hephaestion, talked about, obviously, him and Alexander were extraordinarily close. They were not only best friends, they were lovers. And Alexander actually said, Hephaestion is Alexander. And we know from Arrian that Hephaestion fell sick. His doctor ordered him to stay at home, not drink alcohol, not eat meat. Doctor went off to the theatre. Hephaestion ate meat, drank a lot of alcohol, fell sick, and he died. And the grief that Alexander experienced was extraordinary. Look, and there's reasons for that. As I said, Hephaestion was his closest friend, absolutely devoted to each other since boyhood. They saw themselves as Achilles and Patroclus reincarnated, if you say, and utterly loyal. Hephaestion was skilled. He was important to Alexander. The only thing is, we don't know much about Hephaestion other than through Alexander's eyes. His importance lies in Alexander's affection. But there's no denying that Alexander was absolutely heartbroken when Hephaestion died, and there is a story that he slept with Hephaestion's pillow thereafter. We go to Justin, who says that the long period of mourning for Hephaestion was undignified for a king. Alexander spent an extraordinary amount of money on a monument for Hephaestion and gave orders that he should be worshipped as a god. In fact, messengers were sent to the oracle at Siwa requesting Hephaestion be deified, be made a god. The answer came back as, no, that's probably stretched too far, but we can worship him as a hero. So for the cult of Hephaestion, the followers of the cult of Hephaestion was probably only one, being Alexander. So obviously Alexander has to hang the doctor, and then he commits a huge crime of hubris. The temple of Aesclipus, who was the god of healing, that was destroyed, because obviously Aesclipus hadn't done his job. We had 3 days of sulking in his tent again, and the hero cult was established out of the oracle at Siwa. But there is that quote from Plutarch, from Alexander, that others love me as a king, Hephaestion loved me as Alexander. And then, of course, we have to kill lots of people. There's the Kosaean tribe, the defenseless tribe in the hinterlands there. They were absolutely slaughtered, almost as a sacrifice to Hephaestion's ghost, if you like. And if that story, as I talked about from Curtius Rufus, that Roxanne gave birth to Alexander's son on the banks of the river Baeus, and then Alexander buried his stillborn child, if that story is true, then we see a link between Alexander's grief and the need to slaughter people, because the slaughter of the Malian tribe followed directly after Alexander burying his firstborn on the banks of the river Baeus. And then when, obviously, the grief that one would feel at that, he sort of deals with that by killing people. And perhaps we see this again with Hephaestion's death, and the Kosaean tribe was slaughtered. So we've got those links there. Oh, sorry, that was just a personal one. And that's it. Okay, so we've done the death of Hephaestion, and we've done the mutiny of Opus, and that's us. Today we're looking at Exile's Decree, and the end is near, the death of a god. Ka kite.